those nutrient deficiencies, 95% of women remain deficient despite taking prenatal vitamins. 97% of pregnant women take a prenatal, and yet 95% are left depleted. So clearly there was a problem with the solutions. The problem was not women being compliant. The problem was really, how are these products being designed? And most prenatals in the US are designed around what's known as an RDA. It's basically a nutritional bare minimum. The concept of an RDA, which is like a recommended daily allowance, came out of 1941, a wartime, when it was a really novel invention at the time, this concept of how do we up the nutrient sufficiency of a population heading into war, viewed as basically like our health is a national security interest. But the paradigm was really grounded in how do we avoid a disease in the general population, not how do we optimize health, not how do we orient around the specific diseases that impact women, or in the case of perinatal, fertility, pregnancy, and postpartum, the diseases that most impact pregnant women, like gestational diabetes or hypertension. We now know from the research that a lot of the pregnancy-related outcomes actually translate into lifelong health for women. So if you were pregnant 20 years ago, how you went through pregnancy can actually impact your health today, which is wild, but none of that was contemplated when the RDAs were set. And they have been updated over time, but not substantially. Fundamentally, they're still grounded in this concept of a nutritional bare minimum. And
that makes sense.
The problem really, like where the rubber meets the road, is that these national nutrition standards are guiding vitamin formulation, and they're guiding doctors' recommendations and much more outside of that in the public policy sphere. But you take a vitamin, you think it's meeting your needs, you think it's filling in the gaps of your diet. It's like an insurance policy, but it's not. And what we know from the research and clinical experience is that most women aren't getting anywhere close to optimal ranges through the combination of taking supplements and through their diet. It's really a lifelong women's health problem, and it's really why Needed exists, is to raise awareness for this problem of nutritional depletion and to be part of the solution to fixing it. Most women are told that the prenatal is for the baby, and of course it is. Of course, you want to ensure the health of the growing fetus. That's a top priority. But our bodies are also pretty good at contributing the nutrition that our babies need. Healthy babies are born all the time in times of famine, in times of war, like in very suboptimal conditions, healthy babies can still be born. And that's because our bodies prioritize the baby's needs. But the consequence of that is many women start out pregnancy already nutritionally depleted, as Ryan and I were in that state. Decades of being on hormonal birth control can deplete the body of important nutrients. Those synthetic hormones can be taxing on the liver and other bodily processes and raise your baseline nutrient requirements. So if women don't know that, and they don't know to fix their kind of nutritional status before pregnancy, then they go through the 9 months of pregnancy, which is so taxing. Your blood volume doubles. It's just such a metabolically, nutritionally intense time. And then giving birth, and then breastfeeding for many women who choose to or are able to breastfeed, that is also very taxing on the body. So the cumulative effect of this is, if you're only giving your body kind of a bare minimum amount of nutrition throughout that time period, as needs are dramatically increasing, women are often left nutritionally depleted at the end of the day, even if the baby is perfectly healthy and the birth was a success. And the outcome often is that mom is left depleted. And to give a couple of examples of this, your body literally takes calcium from your bones and teeth to give to the baby's forming skeletal system in utero. The baby's brain needs so much omega-3 and choline for development. And there's research showing that actually the maternal reserves of choline and omega-3 in the brain are depleted through that process. There's some research showing that actually women's brains never fully recover from that if they're not supplementing in a really serious way, because many women don't know how important it is to consume high dosages of these nutrients. And then we move into, and I think this is something that we're really passionate about, is helping women understand the connection, because this isn't being talked about widely. How you move through this life stage of fertility, pregnancy, and postpartum is directly connected to how you move through the next several decades of your health as a woman. So through the stages of women's health in your late 30s, in your 40s, perimenopause, which by the way is the second most nutritionally demanding time in a woman's life as hormones are shifting and changing. This is a critical time period in a woman's life. And I'm so grateful that there are so many, that it's becoming talked about now, that women are increasingly aware that menopause is, we think of menopause as kind of like a before and the after, but there's actually this 10 up to 15 year time period in a woman's life before the clinical definition of menopause, which is 12 months without a period, that is just so important for setting a health foundation for women's health thereafter. I think we are talking about, or as a society, people are talking about the need for fiber. There are supplements on the market that are marketing themselves as a GLP-1 alternative, so naturally supporting GLP-1s, but there's not nearly enough focus on how do you be the nutritional support surrounding GLP-1s, because the usage of it is growing significantly, and the largest number of GLP-1 users are women over the age of 40. So it is something that it's really imperative for women's health that we raise awareness for the fact that caloric restriction in any form, but certainly through GLP-1 usage, can contribute to nutritional deficiency, and it's a problem. And women's bone health matters so much as we age, and those who are taking GLP-1s, they're at known risk for muscle mass decline in a pretty rapid way, and muscle is so important for bone health, and making sure that you're supporting muscle mass with protein, and we have a forthcoming creatine product that can be a great solution or addition to a women's diet when she's on a GLP-1. It's just really important, and again, an area where we often turn to, and I'm not knocking women for taking GLP-1s, same as we would never criticize a woman for taking hormonal birth control. They can be great tools, but the problem is that there is a lack of informed consent being given about the nutritional complications that can arise from doing so. I think a lot of people aren't aware of how closely linked the gut is to hormone production as well. We see this in fertility as well as in midlife, that the gut it's critical to, the microbiome is critical for hormone production and synthesis. So healthy hormone levels do trace back to gut health, and making that a priority. There's simple food ways of supporting the gut: eating fermented foods, eating a diversity of plants, eating lots of seeds and fiber, but also taking a women's specific probiotic can be very beneficial. A lot of women, as they age, the vaginal microbiome also changes, and there are strains. We have a women's pre and probiotic that was initially designed for pregnancy, but a lot of the strains in it support the vaginal microbiome because that's critical in pregnancy. The baby's microbiome is seeded through birth, through vaginal birth. And there's also now some research showing that the uterus is not a sterile environment, so the baby gets some exposure to the maternal microbiome in utero as well. But for women who are in midlife, as the vaginal microbiome changes with hormone changes, we can tend to have some complications, whether it's vaginal dryness or UTIs increasing as the microbiome changes. And that all really starts with gut health. The microbiome in your gut is connected to so many different processes in the body. So I'm so glad you brought that up, because it is absolutely such an important thing to focus on in midlife.
I want to know what testing we can do to see, because I generally like to test, measure, and assess. Am I nutrient deficient, and do I need more vitamin D or not? And is the supplement I'm taking working? So it's so simple to get a vitamin D test, but there's a whole lot of micronutrients and vitamins and minerals that need to be looked at. So how do you recommend testing to see what you're deficient in?
Yeah, when Ryan and I first tested our nutrient levels about 10 years ago, it was through an at-home nutrient test, so the finger prick tests. Those are available. There are also some other direct-to-consumer testing options like Function Health. I don't know if they're international, but in the US, Function Health is like a membership-based program where you get access to a bunch of tests, including micronutrient testing twice a year. There's also a pretty detailed hormone panel. You can test cortisol levels, et cetera, through Function Health. If you have a practitioner that is willing to order more detailed micronutrient testing, that is amazing. We've found often that that is not the case. Oftentimes we'll hear from needed customers that their OB would order vitamin D and iron, but not any more detailed micronutrient testing. But naturopathic doctors, registered dietitians, functional medicine doctors are much more, and midwives as well, are much more likely to order more detailed micronutrient panels. So that's another option. And then I think there is also a direct-to-consumer option through LabCorp and Quest. It's just more expensive than if your doctor orders it. Personally, I would start with your doctor. If you run into any roadblocks, I would check out options like Function Health. I believe it's around I think it might even be priced at $360 to mirror the 365 days in a year. But that is a pretty comprehensive maybe not quite as comprehensive as working with a functional medicine doctor, but can actually be pretty cost effective because they also help with interpretation of the results. So that is not affiliated at all. It's just a company that we're aware of that makes access to that testing more ubiquitous.